The deadline to complete the 2020 census is rapidly approaching. If you think the responses don't impact you, think again. From the roads you drive on to Head Start, Medicaid, and affordable college tuition, the census responses play a big part in your daily lives. For communities of color, being undercounted can mean underfunding and underrepresentation. With billions of dollars on the line for Florida, tonight, why you don't want to slam the door on this important civic responsibility. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to NBC6 Voices, streaming on YouTube and NBC6 Facebook pages. I'm Jawan Strader. We're going to get to the census in just a moment, but there's an important conversation that we need to have here, and it is the latest decision by a grand jury in Louisville, Kentucky, a grand jury that pretty much decided the fate of this, what was many people were hoping would be justice. A former Louisville police officer has been indicted by a grand jury on wanton endangerment charges. The charges are in connection to his actions on the night Breonna Taylor was killed by police, but not for her death. Two other officers at the shooting were not indicted. So basically, in a nutshell, no charges for the shooting death of Breonna Taylor. So let's get to our discussion, and please welcome to our conversation that we're about to have here right now. And this is not going to be a long one because we do want to go into the census conversation as well. But please join us so we kind of learn a little bit more about what happened here today when so many people wanted justice. Please welcome Marwan Porter, civil rights attorney, as well as Reuben Roberts. He is the president of the Miami-Dade NAACP. Welcome you both to NBC6 Voices. I really appreciate you. All right, Marwan. You got it. Marwan, let's start off with you. Let's talk about what happened here today. What exactly is it? Explain this grand jury's decision.
Yeah, well, a grand jury was convened to consider, the evidence that was presented to them. And in considering that evidence, they then consider the array of crimes that could be placed upon the officer, Hankerson. And what they found was, after considering the evidence, that the only crime that they believe could be supported was this wanton endangerment. And basically what that is just, this officer, Brett Hankerson, acted with such carelessness and recklessness in shooting into the apartment, which ended up into bullets, projectiles going into other apartments, that basically they just put other people's lives in harm's way. And it really had nothing to do with Breonna, unfortunately. And I believe this is just an unfortunate display of injustice. That's all it is. And you'll hear a little bit more, from my fellow host on here, but the system is in place to protect police officers, period.
That's right.
And so the grand jury and the attorney general, unfortunately, even if they don't agree with it, they have to abide by the letter of the law. So if you want changes and you want different outcomes, when you see these heinous and ridiculous display of injustice, it starts at the legislative level.
Okay, and I want to get back to that in a minute, Marwan, but I want to talk to you, Reuben. I want to ask you, as far as the charges are concerned, what do you make of these charges?
I think you said it best. There are no charges. In the incident of an innocent life lost, Breonna Taylor, a person that was an essential worker during COVID, really doing her best to give to her community. And she just was home after a hard day's work. And there's no knock warrant that was issued at the wrong address. And then you go in at this time of night, and anyone in their domicile has the right to protect it. Her boyfriend returns fire, and then they unload on them. And this is just a travesty of justice. The AG failed to perform his job, his duties. But not only there's an injustice in terms of the lack of charges for this incident, I think that there were supposed to be additional people charges other than the other two police officers. Whoever that commanding officer was that went and got the warrant with the erroneous address, whoever went out there and sent those folks out there knowing that they already had the suspect in custody already, failed to perform their task, and that's subsequently they have blood on their hands. A life was lost. This young lady with a promising future, now she can't be here anymore. And justice, well, they say justice is blind, and in this case, justice is tone deaf, because we're not responding to the people that we see. This is why we have so much uprising. And then we realize, not only do we realize as Black people, but all people are realizing now that there are two tiers of justice. There's justice for those who are considered mainstream society, and then there's justice for those who look like me and you. And so one of the things that we need to do is really address that. You can't have these two tiers. These two tiers only serve to create more conflict, division, and confusion.
And Marwan, I want to go back legally to what happened here today. Let's talk about what could have happened. What could have happened? What maybe should have been done that was not done? So I know there was a grand jury that looked at it and decided whether or not charges should be brought against those police officers involved. But could the prosecutor just had said, hey, listen, I'm going to go ahead, or the state attorney there in Kentucky just decided, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and charge those who I believe is responsible? Could they have just done that and then risk going to trial and everything else? That was never done. There's no manslaughter charges. The attorney general has said that he will not seek any additional charges.
Yeah, I mean, every state, is different, but it is very common, when you have these type of cases, these type of, murders, I mean, that's what it was. I mean, we just call it is what it is. They leave it to the grand jury. They put the evidence and the facts in front of the grand jury, and they allow the grand jury to make a decision in terms of what elements they believe there's been a prima facie showing of the evidence that could be presented to a jury. So in terms of how the law works there, in Kentucky, I'm not sure, but I know, here in Florida, anytime we have one of these cases, and it's not only police misconduct cases, any type of these first degree, or murder, manslaughter, attempted, murder crimes, they're presented to a grand jury. And again, I can't emphasize enough, the way that we are going to be able to change this is by hitting the root. We always address the problems as they happen, but the problems are emanating from the root. The root is the system. So if we want to effectuate change, we have to get involved in local politics. We can't just show up, when something goes wrong. We have to show up every day, agitate.
Very good point. And my last question to you, Ruben, is before we go on to our next topic, but my last question to you, Ruben, he talked about getting involved. Getting involved means voting, and not just voting for the big races like the president of the United States, like some of these major races like Senate or Congress, but voting on a local level, on judges and legislators that will be making some of these laws and rules, correct?
That is correct. We in the Miami-Dade branch of the NAACP, we have a very active civic engagement, and we believe in the process of voter education, voter registration, and voter mobilization. So yes, we believe that people should be exercising their civic rights and duties to vote, but we want you to remember to vote up and down the ballot. Don't just look at the presidential election. Look at all of the candidates. All politics are local. So when you're looking at who's going to be running for your state attorney, who's running for sheriff, who's running for these key positions that really have an impact on your life daily, have an impact on how your child, your children, your husband, your family member will be handled in the criminal offenses, will have an impact on what happens with your family or your household in the advent of COVID and if there's not support for a moratorium on housing or mortgages or rent. So this is why you need to be voting. Your voice is your vote. And remember, when we vote, we win. But if we don't vote, we can't complain, and ultimately, we won't win. So that the thing of it is that yes, we definitely need to make sure if we want to have a say in this systemic system that has a lot of injustices in it. The only way that we're going to be able to do that is that we become a part of that system and that we exercise our rights to vote so that we can influence the system through our vote by putting people in those places, in those positions that think that will represent us well.
Marwan Porter, before we let you go, any last and final thoughts on Breonna Taylor and the decision that came out today?
I think Reuben Roberts hit the nail on the head. We got to get involved every day, not even when it's election season, with your county commissioners, your state representatives. Get involved, show up at the meetings, raise hell in there every day, so that when, they know that we are looking at them, with the magnifying glass, and we are on top of it every day. We're on top of the issues so that, otherwise, they're just going to do what they want to do. And the system is built in order to keep certain people up and keep certain people down. But we could change the system. And a lot of what you're seeing with these Black Lives Matter movement, some agree, some disagree. But I'll tell you one thing, people are paying attention. And when you start paying attention, that's a start, because otherwise these things will continue to go wrong. So get involved. Thank you, Juwan, for providing a platform where we can educate one another, which is a big part of it as well, because a lot of people don't even know what to do.
Right.
They don't even know how to get involved. So, get involved, agitate. And we need to take this extremely seriously every day of our lives.
You're right.
Amen.
And Juwan, I just want to make one comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for those who are watching this show and they feel that the $12 million awarded to the family is justification, like, okay, what's the big deal? The family got paid. If you ever lost a family member tragically, someone that's close to you, you cannot put a monetary value on that life that is lost. And I just want to really reiterate that, because I've heard some chatter out there and I heard that kind of conversation. If my son is lost, $12 million could never suffice for my son or my wife's loss. And so that's something that we must understand. Although you may be able to take care of some other things, it can never replace the life of that person. And so I want to share that with folks and make sure that they consider that when they think about this verdict and how they're handling this particular case.
It can't replace that or justice. Or justice.
And as a lawyer, I like to have the last word.
I apologize.
Hey, to piggyback, off of Mr. Robert said, he's right. And I think the one positive thing that has come out of all of this is, you're right. It's not the fact that they got $12 million. I don't even think about that. With that $12 million, there is some reform that's going to have to be implemented within their policing. And the reform is what's going to save your kids' lives, my kids' lives, and every other kid's, and every other person's lives out there. So it's the reform. And I think that's exactly what Mr. Roberts was talking about. Money comes and goes. We need systemic reform, policy changes so that we can change our.
Absolutely.
All right. Marwan Porter, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. We're going to let you go. Reuben, you stick around because we're going to have more of a conversation now when it comes to the census, which could have an impact on some of the things that we are talking about, which is extremely important because the clock is ticking, folks, for all of us to complete the 2020 census. Yet many of us haven't even touched it. Yeah, unless a federal court intervenes, the deadline to fill out the census is next week. And the time it typically takes for you to scroll through your social media feed, you can fill out your census form. It's that simple. It's that easy. So doing so is extremely important. So join me for this conversation tonight to explain why are Marilyn Stevens. She's the Assistant Regional Census Manager, and Jefferson Noel. He's a professor at Florida Memorial University. Thank you both for joining me for this conversation, along with Reuben Roberts once again. It's a very important one. Okay, so let's get right to it. When people, including those that are watching right now, and they say, well, it's not that important. It's not that important to me, Marilyn. Why should I fill it out? But it is important.
Jawan, thank you so much for having me. Is the census important? Let's talk about that. The primary reason we conduct the census is to determine how many seats in Congress each state gets. The more seats a state has, the bigger the state's voice, and the wider the pipeline of resources. Most people don't realize that the reason there is a congressional Black caucus, a congressional Hispanic caucus, and a congressional Asian caucus, it was brought about because of the census. It's about representation and resources, or you can put it another way, power and money.
Mm-hmm.
And wow. And Jefferson, I want to come over to you now. I want to include you in on this conversation. Explain the link between Black Lives Matter and the protests we've seen since the summer and the importance of filling out the census. Talk about that.
Well, thank you for having me, Jawan. First and foremost, allow me to say that protests are patriotic and necessary in any functioning democracy, especially in the US where we have high ideals to live up to. So whenever protests are brought up, many people, they're actually turned off because of rioting and looting. However, the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, they studied close to 8,000 protests in all 50 states and DC and found that 93% of those protests were peaceful. So I say that to say that protesters are protesting and rioters are rioting. And so folks who are protesting, which is the majority, they're rightfully protesting for justice, equal and fair representation, and a better allocation of funds and for underserved communities. And that's where the census comes in. The census will be used as to direct billions, not millions, billions of dollars in federal funds to local communities for schools, roads, and public services. And that's because the federal government relies on census data to calculate how to distribute those funds. And so the math is simple. If less people are counted, your community receives less money. So everything that we're protesting for, everything that we're fighting for, we can see results, we can see solutions if enough of us are counted in the census.
Okay, so Reuben, I want to come over to you now. What are you doing to try to get people to fill out the census?
So our branch has definitely been involved since the very beginning. I was a member of the Miami-Dade County Task Force, and we've also gone out to inform people about the census and encourage them to fill out their census form. So we've been doing that now for the greater part of the last 5 months, 6 months or so. And so one of the things I think that is very important for folks to really realize, if any of you have benefited from any of the food distribution programs that are out there, those dollars are coming down from those census dollars. All right. Yes. If your kid receives free lunch in school, if you are riding down the road and there are no potholes in it, and you have proper infrastructure in your community, that's the census dollars. So one of the things that we must understand is that a part of our protest should be about getting resources into our community and into the community that most need it. And so the only way that we can do that is that everyone that lives in those communities that are needing additional resources have to be counted. If we're not counted, then we can't get those resources. If you've ever gone to the emergency room and you don't have a bit of insurance and they took you in, those dollars that they've received as their apportionment is about the census that was filled out. And this is the thing that you must understand. It happens every 10 years. So you don't get a shot that, I won't do it this year, I'm going to do it next year. No, if you don't do it now, you got to wait another 10 years. And so we've always been undercounted from 0 to 5, primarily, and primarily in Black and brown communities, we've been undercounted. And so it's imperative that we do our part to fill out the census and make sure that we're counted so resources can come our way.
Okay, so Marilyn, let's talk about the response rate from what you you know so far in regards to the census, and then some of the challenges some of the census workers face? Because we showed video, we had a report just this past week of some census workers being threatened, going door to door, just trying to give out information and being run off and everything else. So talk about that, and let's talk about the response rate in South Florida.
You know, most people think the way we conduct the census is that we come to your house, sit in the living room with the family, or sit on the front porch and sip lemonade and iced tea and collect the data. Well, we did that through 1950. Starting in 1960, we started self-response. We sent the questionnaire to the door. We urged the households to fill it out and mail it back to us. Here we are, the 21st century, the second census of the 21st century. For the first time in history, we have 3 options to self-respond: online, by phone, and by mail. Well, we prepared for every eventuality that would happen in the census. However, we did not prepare for a pandemic. So while we were sending out notifications, the census is here, go online or call the toll-free number. And in some targeted households, we actually sent the questionnaire first. We had to shut down the field operation because of the pandemic on March 15th. And we started sending letters out on March 12th. So we had to do everything virtually to raise awareness. So people were steadily getting things in the mail. They got the invitation letter. Then they got the reminder card. Then they got a reminder letter. And then if you still thought we were going to give up, we sent a paper questionnaire to your house. And if you thought we still forgot about you, we sent you another reminder. And then we decided, wow, this pandemic is going longer than we thought. We need to come up with something else. So then we sent out a 6th thing that was not even in the original operations plan. So then we get to a point, we know that we've got to knock on doors, because at some point, the self-response, even with 3 options, is going to hit a plateau, and it did. So starting on August the 11th, we started knocking on doors. However, you still had the option of going online at my2020census.gov or calling a toll-free number at 844-330-2020. And as a 92-year-old said, do I have to talk to a machine or talk to a human? You talk to a human. And so now we're knocking on doors, right? Now we're knocking on doors, and people are saying, why are you here? We're here to ensure that over the next 10 years, your community will have what it needs. That's why.
Amen. And have what it needs, so it impacts you at the end of the day. So it's not only my community, but it will have an impact on me indirectly in some sort of way. And so, and some people don't realize that, and sometimes directly. And so,
Juwan,
okay, let's.
Yeah,
yes,
let me tell you this. Here in South Florida, about 5 weeks ago, I was in a store. Someone recognized me and said, "Hey, Miss Census, how's that census going?" I'm thinking, "Oh God, do I have my makeup on?" You know, and so I said, "If you've completed yours, if everyone in your neighborhood, all your family members, even your enemies, I'm good. The census is going really, really well." So the young lady, the cashier, said, "Why does she call you Miss Census? I've never heard of census before." So the lady said, "Don't say that.
Wow.
Don't say that. Take it back." So she's going to go ballistic. Don't tell them that's not true. Tell them that's not true. So she said, I've never heard of census. And she said, "I'm 27 years old." So I said, "Look, 10 years ago, you were 17. And 10 years before that, you were 7. So there are 2 census cycles. Someone else put you on the questionnaire." I said, "Let me tell you what the census is. If programs like Good Roads," and then she talked about she almost missed a pothole earlier, and she said she was praying because she couldn't afford a new tire. I said, if that's important to you, if healthcare is important to you, and the children's health insurance program is important to you, how about early Head Start and the Head Start program? How about social services? If you lose your job, unemployment benefits, and the SNAP program, the WIC program, affordable housing, Section 8 vouchers, free and reduced lunch in school. How about Granny, Meals on Wheels? And if your car's not working, you have to use public transportation. I said, it's more than 140 programs. And she said 8 words that hit me square between my eyes. She said, all of those programs are important to me. All of those programs are important to me. She said, I need to know about the census. That grabbed me at my core. I left that store. And my friend and I walked out. She said, "Did you hear what she said?" I said, "She said, all of these programs are important to me." I went home, put my groceries away, looked and got some materials together, looked at my watch. I said, wow, the store closes in 15 minutes. Let me get some things together. I got in my car,
No,
said, if
you
I do
didn't.
some, and went back to the store. And before they closed,
Wow.
and she said, did you leave something? I said, no. I said, I wasn't going to come in this store, but something
Right.
pulled me in here. And I said, I came in here to
Wow.
meet you. I said, here's
Wow.
some materials. We have a book for children called Everyone Counts. You say you have a little girl. Go home tonight. The two of you will learn
That's right.
about the importance of the census. Go online, complete it together, and send me a text. And then call 10 of your friends and tell them that all of
Right.
these programs are important to them too.
That's right. That's right. You sound more like Mama Census. Not, yeah, that's what you sound like. More like Mama Census, right? Not Miss Census, but Mama Census. So Jefferson, you heard from Maryland there. So I have to hear from you about what's being done on college campuses like Florida Memorial University to make sure that our young students know about what the census is all about.
Yes, of course. They call Miss Stevens Miss Census, so they've been calling me Mr. Voter Registration. So now I have to be called Mr. Census too. But there's a lot of conversations happening about the U.S. Census on college campuses. So actually, this Friday at 3 p.m., we will have Miss Stevens with us to speak about the U.S. Census, so all of our students can hear what she has to say. And on our university, we made a concerted effort to do a lot of voter education and voter registration at the same time, and a lot of programming around that. And included in that programming, we're adding the U.S. Census to make sure that our students know about it. Because to Ms. Stevens' point, if someone is 18 years old right now, they didn't hear about the census because they were 8 years old, probably playing Pokemon.
Right.
And so it's important that as they enter into the college atmosphere, that they understand what the U.S. Census is and how they should respond to it and how they should speak with their family members. So there's a lot of conversations happening at Florida Memorial University and a lot of programming that's taking place that will include the U.S. Census.
And, Ruben, a lot of folks out there are concerned that maybe if I fill out the census, I'm going to get in trouble. Maybe there's something in my background, there's something, maybe I'm going to get deported or something, because if I fill out this census, I could be doing something illegal. What are you doing to make sure you get past some of these myths?
So we have fact sheets that we give out, and we let folks know that there are laws that protect them. So whoever you are, whether you are a United States citizen or not, we want you to be counted. You have protections under the law so that you can fill out these forms. And we want to make sure that you are that you're counted. Everyone that lives in this country utilizes the resources that the census provides, helps to provide. So everyone that lives in this country needs to fill out a census form so that we can have an accurate account. So you have so many dollars that are coming down. And in this county alone, in this county, in the South Florida area, we share with you one reason. Look at traffic when everything's open, and look at how long it takes for you to just move from one area to the next. We're getting so many more people coming in this community, and the resources are being strained. And so if we don't fill out those resources, we don't fill out those census, we won't be able to have the adequate amount of funding to provide for those public dollars that we utilize every day. And so that's why it's so very important. But folks need to know, and we have resources. You can go to the Miami-Dade branch of the NAACP.com. We'll go on our civic engagement page. You can go and look at through our civic engagement community and find out information that you need to do with census. But no better place to go than to Mama Census and making sure that you get that information there. And I really appreciate what Brother Noel is doing out on the campus.
Amen.
Because one of the things that we have to do is get young people engaged across the board through elections, through the voting, and filling out their census. So I appreciate the story that you told, Ms. Stevens, and I appreciate the work that you all are doing out there, Jefferson. And I know that you're doing a yeoman's job out there.
Okay, so we're running out of time. So Mama Census, Mama Stevens, I have to ask you real fast. Let people know real fast. How long does it take me to fill out the census, and what is the deadline?
It takes you less than 10 minutes to ensure you have resources for the next 10 years. Unless the courts come up with something different, we will complete all field operation for this census on September 30th. Time is running out.
Yes.
Time is running out September 30th. And I want to thank all of you. Remember, folks, we have the resources that you need. We always like to provide them at the end of NBC6 Voices here. And if you have any information on the 2020 census, just head on over to NBC6.com and search 2020 census. Everything you need to know about the census is right there. It's that simple. It's that easy. So Jefferson Noel, Reuben Roberts, Marilyn Stevens, Mama Census, thank you guys so much for joining me this evening for this all-important conversation. And I really appreciate each and every one of you, as well as Marwan Porter, of course, who joined us earlier on as we were talking about Breonna Taylor and the recent decision that came out. I want to encourage all of you, if you have any comments or questions, leave them right here. Also, follow me on NBC6. Follow me on Twitter at JawanNBC6 or Instagram, JawanNBC6. And again, remember, what we're learning right now is all about education. Education is the key to success. If you believe, you will achieve, and we will succeed together. Thank you so much for watching Voices with me. I'm Jawan Strader. Have a great evening.